Hello, beautiful people. You are listening to the Communal Table podcast, part of Food and Wine Pro. I'm your host, Kat Kinsman, Senior Editor at Food and Wine. And my guest today, okay, I have to say up front, this is weird not to be in person with her because usually we can spin around in our chairs at work and look at each other. That's when she's in the office because she's usually been on the road as she has been scouting out and doing all the legwork and the miles and just the hard work of finding this 2020 class of Best New Chefs. Welcome to our restaurant editor and the auteur of this year's class of Best New Chefs, Khushbu Shah. I miss your face too. And do you want to describe where you currently are?
I am currently talking to you from my childhood bedroom in East Lansing, Michigan. Go Spartans! That my dad has half converted into a gym. So there's a heavy bag behind me that I think gives a lot of coworkers a kick whenever we do video calls.
I have greatly delighted in you on these video calls. It's either the heavy bag behind you or Ina Garten and a giant Cosmo. But it's, I mean, I have to say, like, for you to be in one place for more than a few days is a change for you.
Massively, yeah.
Yeah, but like, so I want to get into Best New Chefs. Am I correct? Is this number 32?
Yes, I believe so. It started in 1988.
Yeah,
So
and there was a
that
year
was,
off.
yes.
Yeah. It's a hell of a legacy.
Really crazy. I mean, I feel very honored to be able to be the person to continue it on. Yeah.
Yeah, I always so I know that there've, been everybody's done it in their own way for decades and stuff. And when I started really following it, Kate Crater was working on it, and then Jordana Rothman,
Mhm.
and you've picked up the mantle of this, and each person has, it's amazing to go back through this roster of chefs since the first class and look and see at the mark that they have made on American cuisine. And like, geez, no pressure, Kush, but that's a huge thing. It's a huge legacy to uphold.
Yeah, it's really crazy, right? When you really look at it, it's like David Chang was part of this, Daniel Boulou, like just people that you can't really talk about American restaurant culture today without bringing them up. And like this program basically identified them like before they became, David Chang and Daniel Boulou. And it's exciting to think that, some of the chefs from this class could be, that big and that influential, in the coming years.
Yeah, I mean, and it's an incredible thing because it's sort of, it goes a couple different ways because it's people who are sort of already doing this work, but then it shines a spotlight on them so they can do even more of that work, and then it shapes the culture even further and really gives them a platform. We're having to do stuff really differently this year. Thank goodness you had finished all of your travel before
Ooh.
before all the did you were done, you had just finished everything when
I
the
had
guidelines
just
started.
finished. I literally had gotten back from sort of like a Pacific Northwest run, and basically about 2 weeks later, all other trips got called off. Yeah, so I had just gotten in under the wire.
And let's talk about how many cities you visited for this.
Ooh, yeah, I did 25 cities this year. That includes San Juan, Puerto Rico. That includes Jackson, Mississippi. That includes sort of the middle of nowhere, Los Alamos, California. Um, and it includes, obviously a lot of the big cities too. But I wanted to make sure, that this didn't become like a fully coastal list, and we were paying attention to every region as much as we could. Obviously, dream world would be to get to all 50 states, but unfortunately, we have budget and time limitations. So tried to get to as many as I possibly could in given the circumstances.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I saw the labor that you put into this, and I saw and like I said, I've known the people for years who have done this. I saw the intensity of travel that Kate Crater had, that Jordana had, and the toll it takes on your sanity. And
Mhm.
it's a lot of not getting to be in your own bed and being on airplanes and losing track of what city you're in at what particular time. And like, yes, it's obviously like dream job in so many ways because it's so important, and because the vast and varied kinds of restaurants you get to eat in. But like, make no mistake, like this is some work.
Yeah, it's I know it sounds insane to ever complain about, right, getting paid to run around the country, eating at like the best restaurants there are, when that's literally, the goal is to find the best restaurants and the best new chefs. Like, but it does sort of wear on you. Some days all I want to do is just sit on my couch and like eat a salad or like, a bowl of yogurt rice. And like,
You love yogurt rice.
I love yogurt rice. Um, and kind of do nothing, or like when I would have I basically joked that my New York apartment was a very expensive storage unit, because I would be there maybe 4 days a month. So it made me really appreciate my apartment when I was there. But at the same time, I'm someone I do love hotels. I love like just landing in a new city and just the immediate change in vibes and scenery and the way, even just the vocabulary of the people around you. You step foot in DC and it's like the terms that you hear everywhere are just so different than like LA and so different than Detroit. And it's just such a reminder of how incredible the food culture is, in this country. Like it's such a cliche, but like what a time to be
Oh
alive. Like
man, yes.
it's especially juxtaposed now with like what's happening, currently, with all the restaurants having to be shut.
Yeah,
I
it's heartbreaking.
it's just been such an exciting and crazy year in dining. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because you were simultaneously doing Best New Chefs and Best New Restaurants,
Yes.
during your scouting, during this, and I mean, it is a heartbreaker. Right now, looking at all of these places, and basically, maybe some places are open for takeout or curbside, but
Mhm.
with the exception of just a few states, nobody is really able to do dine in, or if they do, it has to be in a very socially distanced kind of way. So it almost feels like, it's a snapshot in time for what's going on. Because I know you had to rewrite a lot of your copy to reflect what was going on.
Yeah, tons of rewriting, tons of re-interviewing. I feel like I spent basically the past month just on the phone nonstop because also there's no other way to report right now, right? Like I can't just like pop back over to someone's restaurant or whatever to catch up with them and see what's going on. It just has to be over the phone to do it safely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I've spent so much time on the phone in more that I'm the person who does not love the phone. And I mean, I obviously do it for work to interview people, but like I really miss, in-person conversations with sources and stuff. But we're trying, and it's funny, I'll be on the phone with the chef and clearly like they're in their kitchen because you hear the ventilation system, you hear whatever it is, and everybody's
Mhm.
like having to be expediter and chef and prep and all that stuff all at once. So it's been, as we've gotten to know this class, seeing them having to navigate all of this with extra layers of just trying to stay in business and stay afloat and stay physically healthy and support the people around them. It's so much right now.
Yeah, they're incredibly resilient. You know, a- with this issue, like I had to, as restaurants were pivoting, constantly. It's a word that we we can't get
Oh,
rid
word
of.
of the year, I think.
We also had to pivot a lot on the issue. Like not just me, like a lot of people go into making this issue. So many people at Food and Wine have touched this, and so Food and Wine and freelancers. Like it's just like the sheer number of people that actually, it takes to put this together is like incredible. And there's been a lot of just constant change. But our change hasn't. It's all manageable compared to the change that these restaurants are going through to literally just keep their businesses open and hopefully be able to just ride this out. I feel like that's everyone's goals right now. Like they don't necessarily need to thrive. They're not trying to be like super successful. They just want to like make enough money to keep the lights on, keep some of their staff paid, and like keep their communities fed. And like that's their goal, at the moment. And it is really heartening though, in reporting all of this, I already knew that this industry was like just filled with some of the scrappiest,
Yeah.
most like I keep saying the word resilient, but like they really are like super determined. Talk about an industry that's like passion driven, right?
Mhm.
Like, you're not in this for the money.
Oh
Like
god,
maybe
no.
like you'll make enough of a living, but no one is in this for the money. And to hear just like how determined and hopeful they are that like not only will they be able to rebuild their businesses but rebuild them, hopefully they're all fighting to rebuild the industry in like an equitable manner, something that was like really lacking before. And we're just on the verge of like really talking about it and really hopefully starting to like fix things. It gives me a lot of hope. I'm really excited and proud of this class.
So by the time that people are listening to this, so we don't have to be cagey about who these people are, because by the time, yeah, because by the time this is released, we can actually talk about who these people actually are, as we have been on. We've been doing mentorship with them over the past few weeks because that's something that traditionally has been part of Best New Chefs. I've been lucky enough to be involved with that for the past few years. Like sort of even before I worked at Food and Wine, I was lucky enough to be part of that, and it feels like it's more relevant this year, more now than ever, because we would always like take them around to restaurants. Like the first year we did it, we went on sort of a crawl of 3 different restaurants, and we had different mentors speak at different places. Last year we had it all at one restaurant, and but they're all sitting there like deer in the headlights because it's just been announced this morning, and they're all watching their phones blow up. And then we have a party for them, and and they've gotten to know each other for a couple of days. We take them to Peking Duck House, and they all get to bond as a class. And we've been having to figure out what else to do to support them during this time. And I keep thinking it's like those babies who were born during tornadoes or hurricanes or something. It's, bring them out into the world, and we're trying to support them as best we can. It's just different needs than before.
Yeah, I more than ever. And it's really crazy because I feel like you're able to really bond, right? When you can all come together in person and eat Peking duck and like drink shitty beer and, kind of do that together. But it's now they're trying to, it's forming the bond with the class like over video chat, which is very interesting. But I hope that they're able to, really bounce ideas off of one another. And I think they're starting to. Yeah.
Yeah, I really hope so. And, the previous classes have, come in and expressed to them that like, hey, we all have a group text. Hey, the people in my class, however long ago that was, like, we're always checking in with each other, and, more than ever. But there was something that one of the chefs said on one of these mentorship, or actually I guess it was the call before the mentorship calls where we were introducing them to each other, because like we're pretty like cagey here and don't tell them who else is in the class. And but they said like, I don't want to be part of the change, I want to be the change. And that's really,
Mhm.
who was it who said that?
It was well, yeah.
Yeah.
Develop Bristol Joseph. He's amazing. I
Oh,
mean, talk about so the big thing about this year's class of Best New Chefs is that we're doing, standalone pastry chefs like for the first time as part of the class. Like, they're not like a partner with someone. They're not part of just a separate pastry chef list. It was really important to me to kind of break down that barrier. I think just because you work in the pastry side of the kitchen, doesn't mean that you aren't also a leader, that you don't have influence on the menu, you don't have influence on how people are eating today. In fact, I think it's almost more so in many ways on that end. Also, when you really look at it, like the percentage of female to male chefs, like right, you're often finding women in the pastry spaces, and so I wanted to make sure to open it up to pastry chefs to be able to be part of this kind of experience. Tavel is like a perfect example of
oh
this
yeah.
too. Like his partner Kevin Fink was a former Best New Chef, I think in 2016. But Tavel and Kevin they're co-owners of 5 restaurant concepts in Austin. Like
Oh,
yeah, 5, and it's like how of course he's a giant leader, especially in Austin. He cooks like he has a really global approach to pastry and baking, but he's also, part of the management team and like, you know, part about like part of how they decide, what hospitality looks like in their restaurants, part of, the decision making on like hiring and healthcare and things like that. He's very involved in that and he's very outspoken in that sort of front and a real forward thinker when it comes to that kind of stuff. So, it's really exciting to be able to put, pastry chefs in this class this year.
Yeah, because just to tap into history for just 1 second, there was 1 year where, or maybe it was two, where there was best new pastry chefs, but it was, often a different list. And
Mhm.
and I see so many chefs who have had to, kind of fight their way to being taken seriously, like pastry chefs who were, maybe dismissed by savory or something, or somehow kind of shunted off to the side, and they almost have felt like they had to fight for legitimacy, which it like breaks my heart, because that is such intense skill that they
It's
have.
incredible skill, yeah.
And their department, they are department heads, and they, that just like every single decision that, a sort of savory chef has to make, they have to make as well. And it's sort of like the backwards and high heels kind of thing, you know.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And so I want to start getting into this list and the specifics of the list, because what I have noticed, that like in each year in the recent years, I look back at some of those covers, and like my eyes, it's very blindingly white and very, very male and all this stuff. And and the work that had gone into recent years lists had been more reflective of the America that we do and should live in. And when I finally saw all the people together on this video chat, I was just like, this, it looks like the America I want to live in, and it's been, moving in that direction. And it was so heartening and so beautiful. You have an age range in there, which I
Mhm.
think is a really lovely thing. And it's spread out geographically, and it's just, it's such a great bunch of human beings. And when you presented it to a wider group here at Food and Wine, you explained each one of the chefs to us, and why you picked them, and you made us all fall in love with them too. So I want to go through this list,
Okay.
sort of one by one, and tell me a little bit about them. First, tell me like the first like adjective or whatever like that pops into your head when I say the chef's name. So,
Okay.
Tavel Bristol Joseph.
Oh man, he's like a giant teddy bear. You meet him in person, he's like 6'5". I think he's 6'5". He's tall. He's a tall, big dude who is a pastry savant, and like one of the warmest people I have ever met, truly.
Okay, and what is his restaurant?
So he is a co-owner of 5 restaurants in Austin, Texas. Let's do all the copy editing now on the so they're all in my brain. Ready? Hestia, Emmer and Rye, TLV, Head and Bit, and Kalimocho. There we go.
Okay.
5.
Man, and am I not thinking like how old is he?
He is in his late 30s, early 40s, in that range. Yeah.
Okay, and I love that he's in there too, because that phone. I remember I saw you right after you talked to him on the phone, and you were saying it was really emotional because he thought he was past the point where he could be picked for such a thing.
Yeah, definitely. And he would, he told me, he's like, I've seen my, a lot of my colleagues, and especially like his, business partner, Kevin, get these honors. And he just thought, he was like, I just never thought I could even be considered for something like this. And so, yeah, it was a really emotional conversation with him.
Oh, lovely. Okay, what do you think of when you think of Daisy Ryan?
Oh man, Daisy Ryan, what a powerhouse. Okay, well, first of all, Daisy is one of the most photogenic people I have ever seen in my life. Like, if you just look at our spread, she's like an Everlane model. It's like amazing. But I love Daisy's approach to food. It's French, but not in the way that you would expect it. It's very French meets California, but very laid back. She calls it French, like that's her approach. And it's really just like the space in Los Alamos, that town is like it's just north of where she grew up, and it's seriously in the middle of nowhere, California. And the main street, there's one main street in this town. I think the population is like 2,000. I'm not recalling the exact number, but it's like a small town, okay? And so it's one street, and she just has this wonderful restaurant called Bells on there, and it's just such a like warm spot. Like when you think about like hospitality and like just like
Yeah.
where you want to spend like 5 hours of your life, like Bell's is that spot, you know? and you can just
And
like mussels and drink really good wine, and like it's just perfect in there. Yeah.
'cause I was gonna say, like, that I know, this year you were saying, like, there's not, like, big white tablecloth on there,
No.
and this is the closest it gets, right? Like
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Tavel, like Hestia is kind of like it's more
mhm,
like a spendier restaurant, but you know what? It's not tablecloths either. None of the chefs are doing like super crazy high end fine dining, where it would cost you like $200, $300, $500 to like eat there. Like, some of them, sure, you probably need to spend out like, like $100 for like a really great meal. But if you look at, I'm sorry, I'm going to jump down on the list for you, but like at Donnie's restaurant, Donnie Sirisavis in Dallas, he owns Noodle Shop. Like everything on that menu is $5 to $7. It's really crazy that
I
he's
mean
selling food that cheap.
but, I mean, again, this is also reflective of where we are in American dining and, the theme of this issue before everything happened, was, future of restaurants, and we're, attacking that in a different kind of way.
Hmm.
But even before all this hit, like, you were sort of more thinking like white tablecloth isn't as much. I mean, there's, it's still important in its way, but like that's not where your interest was laying. And you definitely tried it. You definitely
Yeah.
like did,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
But I think that's this list is really reflective of this. So let's go on to Niven Patel,
Oh man.
and so he kind of had it harder than almost anybody else on the list for very
Kind
specific reasons.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm Indian American, specifically Gujarati American, which is like what Niven's background is too. So I'm particularly picky when it comes to Indian food, especially Indian food in America, etc. So to be so blown away by his cooking and his approach, like none of it felt phoned in, none of it felt too like cutesy fusion, if that makes sense. None of it was really great. He was doing a lot of kind of like home style cooking, but like elevating it with like, restaurant techniques and like really superb ingredients. Like Niven not only owns a farm, he has another farm on his payroll. And then on top of that, he like funds this millet farmer in India and like buys out his entire stock of fresh millet for one dish on the menu. And it's kind of an incredible operation. He calls his farm Rancho Patel, which I think is very cute.
That's
Um,
totally.
he promised to send me mangoes when they become ripe, so I'm just saying this out loud in the world so that he has to actually send me mangoes. Uh,
Actually, I was interviewing another chef today who on your list, and I know what he's sending you as a
oh
present.
my
So.
gosh, is it mangoes? Because I'd be into mangoes.
But
uh,
what's the term that what comes first to mind if like what descriptor would you come up with Niven?
then, oh man, just like truly, like he cooks from this like place like so deep in his soul, like that he doesn't know how to do anything else in a way. You know what I mean? Like he
Yeah.
like this is just like truly who he is, and like he cooks to just like survive as like a human. Like this is like what makes him whole. Like no matter what you throw at him, like he's always going to do this. And it's really moving when you really hear him talk about just like what it's taken for him to open his spots in Miami. Yeah.
Oh, so was it? I was trying to remember. Was it his mom or your mom or something like? There was a dish that they talked about, and his millet made that possible. Am I just coming up with that out of nowhere?
Yeah,
Something
no,
like
there
that.
is. So he does this dish that I have never really seen on restaurant
That's
menus,
what
and it's fresh millet that he chops with just yogurt and save, which is like save is like deep fried like chickpea flour sprinkled. I guess is like the best way to maybe call it. And it's just such a simple dish, but like so revelatory, like to the point where I called my mom like immediately after I had dinner and being like, I can't believe I just had this. Like blah 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 blah. And she's like, she hasn't had it since her childhood. And it sort of pops in your mouth like vegetarian caviar in a way. And
oh,
really like wonderful. And it's so cool to see him go this extra mile to put Indian food on the menu, that like people really have not seen before. Obviously he still makes like a chicken tikka masala and stuff if you really want it. And his version is like probably the best you'll ever have, just because of the amount of care that goes into it. But he really goes out of his way to like do a lot of like Indian home style cooking, not just from the region of Gujarat. You know, he touches on like South Indian food and East Indian food and things like that too. But it's just really smart, sharp cooking.
Oh my god, and now just I kinda want him to pair up with Daisy so they can do a French Rancho
Oh,
or something. French Francho or
that would be
something.
so fun.
Well, because a nice thing is, like, people really do develop these relationships with other people in their class, and so I know from the class from last year, they still, like they've gotten to cook together and, like, travel and do that, so I'm really hoping that these people all get to do that as well.
Same.
So let's move on to our pal Trig, Trig Brown.
Oh
What comes to mind when you think Trig
man.
Brown?
Oh man, Trig is a very humble talent. Yeah, he is really self-deprecating and like not totally head on. Yeah, just how talented and just how much he really knows. Like,
I was just on the phone with him, interviewing him for something related to this, and he kept kind of like not like underselling himself or worrying about things. And I was like, that's why you're so good because you're just like worrying about this stuff all the time, but you're allowed to be like, be a little nicer on yourself right now.
yeah, it's incredible. I mean, I say this very candidly. It takes a lot for me to give this kind of accolade to a white man doing like Asian, Taiwanese food in
Yep.
particular. But like his stuff doesn't come from a place of fetish. It doesn't come from a place of, oh, I went on vacation to Taiwan and like I'm gonna open up a Taiwanese restaurant, by spending 5 days there. Instead, he kind of came at it because he ended up meeting his partner in the restaurant, Josh, and his partner is Taiwanese American, and like they just bonded and like would go to Flushing, Queens, and like they would get really high and just like ride their motorcycle to Flushing, Queens. It's kind of amazing. It's like such a wonderful story, and like they would just like really sit there and like analyze all the food, and then Josh would bring things that like his mom made like over for Trick to try, and like he would re like he would break it down and like figure it all out, and like he just really fell in love with Taiwanese food. He actually didn't go to Taiwan until like just before they were about to open Winsun. So it's he really is like a giant student of this kind of stuff. He's also like has like a lit degree. Like he's an incredible writer and thinker, and just yeah, so humble for what his abilities really are.
Yeah, and he's really really respectful of the
Oh
cuisines
yeah.
that he's working with. Like I called him just to quickly interview him about something for an extra piece related to this, and he got into the history of like Taiwanese cuisine in mainland China, and like it was really like he had really done his homework, and he was like talking about one particular condiment. He's like, I can't make it better than that. Like it was respectful and lovely, and I really love the moment where we haven't mentioned Winsun and Winsun Bakery. When you were doing the reveal to the bigger group, you brought pastries from Winsun Bakery,
Mm-hmm. I
and I
mean,
keep thinking about them.
yeah, talk about restaurants. Like, I mean, so I live in Brooklyn technically, though I'm supposed to live in LA.
Allegedly, you are
Yeah,
my
so I
neighbor.
live in Brooklyn. Technically, I'm supposed to be living in LA by now, but obviously everything's a crazy pandemic. But a lot of our coworkers who live in New York are like constantly ordering from Winsun Bakery for delivery because Trig is still just like churning out an insane amount of food. And I there's no post that I'm more jealous of on Instagram than those. Like it's maybe one of the restaurants I miss the most right now.
What is that rice roll called? What is the name of it?
Oh my god, now I'm blanking.
Oh, the texture of it is so good because it's like sweet glutinous rice on the outside. It's sort of like wrapped tightly in plastic, and then it's got this incredible crunch inside. And I was like
Yeah, it's called Fun
making a
Fun, right? I'm probably butchering how you pronounce it, but Fun Fun, yeah.
oh my
It's amazing. And then he does this
yes,
like
you're absolutely right.
bacon, egg, and cheese scallion pancake situation. He does
Oh,
this Caesar salad that I think about all the time that uses a white sesame dressing on. Um, yeah, it's a lot of just like really clever touches and really just smart cooking.
oh,
Yeah, I mean, anytime you try to
I
go to Done
love
Bakery on the weekends, like there's just a line down the block.
Oh, I love it. So, up next, what do you think of when you think of Donnie Sirasavath?
Donnie, love Donnie. I've not admitted this to him yet, but when I was doing his interview to write the profile of him in the magazine, like I had to put myself on mute because I just found myself tearing up at his story. Donnie,
It's
he's one of the
emotional.
most genuine people I have ever come across. And just like so kind. And he has been dealt a very tough hand in life. Um, his mom passed away from cancer. There was, he's also worked every job under the sun. So his mom ran a restaurant and he grew up in that. But he sort of was like, I don't want to, do this. Like by the time he was like, in his 20s. And so he worked all kinds of jobs, like from Jack in the Box to like Hewlett Packard. Like it was his last. Yeah,
Oh,
it's a
wow.
full range. He also told me that he worked on airplanes. Like it's like a lot of stuff. He's really lived like a really deeply interesting life. But he realized that what really gave him joy in life was cooking. And cooking Laotian food in particular, which is his family's background. And so, uh, yeah, just I don't know. He just does such a beautiful job of like honoring his mother and his mother's legacy, but like while also, championing and furthering Laotian cuisine in such an exciting and beautiful way. And like his restaurant, before all of this was also just it's a small spot, but it's packed to the helm. I was lucky that I went on a rainy night, so we only had like a 20 to 30 minute wait. But otherwise, usually it's like hour to 2 hours just to get a table, to eat his food. And like I was saying, it was really important to him that his food be very affordable, so that like everyone can get in and everyone can enjoy the meal, even if it's labor intensive for him. He doesn't really pass that cost on as much.
So, and what is the restaurant called and where
It's
is it?
called Noodle Shop, and it's in Dallas, Texas. Yeah.
Yeah, so when you're talking about because you're not rolling in there like, "I am Khushbu Shah from Food and Wine." When you're rolling in there, like, you are you're making your reservations and trying to or slipping in somehow because, like, you really wanna do this ethically and because I know you're a person who is, very much a stickler for this, and so you're going in there like a civilian
Oh
when you're
yeah,
doing
for
this.
sure. Well, so what's actually fascinating, I kind of used this year as a just like a test. I was just curious because I am a woman of color, and it's been very interesting to see how different
Oh, yeah.
establishments like sort of treat you. And sometimes I roll up solo or with just one other person, or I'm meeting someone there, so like I roll up by myself, and it's very interesting to see how I'm treated depending on who my guest is. And like I honestly, at a lot of restaurants I will just put my own name down as a reservation. Like I obviously will use like personal email, not like my Food and Wine email, as to not alert them. But um it's interesting, even these places that are very like media sensitive, like these very high end, like flashy places. Like I remember this one restaurant in Los Angeles, like very big for the
Mhm.
year.
I was gonna ask you about this one.
I went
Yep.
with, the LA Times restaurant critic, who by that time had been his third or fourth visit. And so, that team was very aware of like, had really figured out, what Bill Addison looked like. And so, as soon as we got in, they sat us down, and then clearly like like a few minutes later, like the general manager comes like running through the door. It was just like so obvious that he was like clearly somewhere else, and like got called in because Bill was here, and Bill had gone through this whole amazing charade of just like using the most insane alias that like they just never guessed. It was the funniest thing to witness. um but
'Cause he's anonymous.
yeah, but it was obvious, like, when, so they were fussing over Bill, but, like, it was obvious, like, when talking to us that, like, I understood what a menu, like, I was just asking questions that maybe, someone, who's deeply interested in food or knows a lot about food would be asking. And it wasn't until the end of the meal where they, like, ran my credit card that they, like, figured out who I was, which was fascinating because a lot of other restaurants, like, have, photos of it, stuff. It's, I'm not anonymous. I'm not a critic. I am an editor at the end of the day, and my photo is very widely available. There's been articles and stuff, that have my photo on it. So a very quick Google, and there's lots of images of me. And so it is really just, yeah, it's fascinating to see like who puts importance on that and who doesn't. And I was actually able to slip under the radar pretty much 90% of the places I went, which was kind of crazy, but also very nice, to be honest.
Well, but also including, so is this a different restaurant than, there was one where you got seriously
Same
mansplained about the wine?
restaurant. Same restaurant.
Oh, that was that, okay. Yeah, I mean, it is, we have to address this, the fact that you are, a woman of color, dining on your own, and the treatment you get, like, because, hopefully what this list and all the other lists ends up being is, a really great treasure map around the US, and these are places that people are going to go, and you shouldn't have to fight for good treatment. And unfortunately, at a lot of places, I mean, I have a feeling that the restaurants that ended up making the list are places that wouldn't do this in the first place. But restaurants are not always equitable in their treatment of folks, and and that's really laid bare
Mhm.
in this whole process. And and I think, I'm so glad that you brought that up, because it's really, really important. And I hope that anybody who has a restaurant who is listening to this, who maybe treated Kush like that, or treated anybody like that, is going to second guess, because that's, it's bad behavior to begin with. It's cruel. It's, all of these things, but also it's going to not get you included on these lists. So you're shooting yourself in the
Yeah,
foot.
I think people underestimate me when they see me sometimes. They don't I mean, Tejal Rao like talks about this too, as being a female critic who's a person of color also. Like sometimes they just don't take you as seriously, which is fascinating. I'm like, are my dollars not worth the same amount? Like, do you think I can't actually pay for this? Like, what is like the decision behind some of these things? I don't know. It's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, my former colleague Sarah LaTrent and I used to have this thing JBCM, which is just be cool, man, and it works in all circumstances.
Yeah, for sure.
But y so let's move on to your hometown girl,
Yeah.
Lena Serini.
Oh, Lena's
Yeah,
amazing. What a bright spot. Well, when I think of Lena, I think of like someone who's just like serious energy. She is the Energizer Bunny. Like is like sort of thinking about things a million miles per minute. Has really. She's another one of the pastry chefs on the list. She is someone who's just known from a young age that she's wanted to be in food. She scored her job at Selden Standard, which is basically like the restaurant that kind of helped put the renewed Detroit food scene on the map with Selden. And she got her job running the kitchen there at 22. They didn't realize her age and never told them until they were filling out the paperwork. And they're like, wait, you're what? And she was like, yeah. Like at that point, it was already kind of too late. She'd already won them over. And so I love someone who's just kind of like that, a little bit daring. Her flavors are awesome. She'll do things like crust with like Kalamata olives in them. She mixes like za'atar and cake, like she's not afraid to go actually very savory with desserts. She's Lebanese American. She wears a hijab proudly. Like it's such a reflection of Detroit. And her entire family is also very into food, which is very cute. Her dad is like one of the biggest food Instagrammers in Detroit.
what?
It's amazing.
What's his
It's
handle?
F. Ariani. His name is Fred. It's kind of an amazing account. Actually, I've learned a lot about Detroit restaurants. I started making lists of like places I was like I need to check out. Like hopefully can check out or like, at least get takeout from. Her mom is a food photographer. She actually shot Lena's photo for the magazine, which is
Oh
very
my god, I
cute
love
and very
that.
sweet. It's because of course with the pandemic, we half our art plan just ended up not working out because but what a better way to get a photo than if you live with a food photographer. So that was really really sweet. And then her grandfather, who she calls like the OG foodie, like has like apparently just like very like a really gorgeous farm in Lebanon and just like beautiful olive groves and like would make all of his own stuff from scratch and like all that kind of stuff before like apricot marmalade and things before it was like cool to like be this way. And so it's just really like deep in her roots. Yeah.
I I just, oh god, when you were showing us the pictures of everybody's dishes, during your presentation, I was just, my knees were buckling. It was just the loveliest thing. And now that you're talking about like olives in pastry, like just like the beast was unleashed within me. And I'm craving that so badly. And also, I'd said hometown girl because I sort of associate you with
Mhm.
Detroit, but I know it's not technically Detroit, but it's the same
It's
neck of the
Michigan.
woods
Yeah,
there.
I mean, I grew up an hour away from Detroit, so I spent a lot of time,
Yeah,
going to Dearborn in particular, and yeah, I mean, I have a lot of Detroit pride, a lot of Midwest pride. So it's really nice to be able to recognize, like, she's just such a talent, and like everyone in Detroit like knows that, But it's like um, helping other people from around the country also, be introduced to her and her work is a real honor to be able to like to be the person to kind of help facilitate some of that.
it's awesome. I mean, this is basically, I'm looking at this as a map for, what is the road trip that I get to make once we're allowed out of our homes again. Oh, I hadn't mentioned it, but yeah, I'm speaking to Khushbu from Brooklyn, New York. Or I guess I said we were neighbors, so establishing that. But, I'm just plotting out my course from here. And the next place I'd drive would be to St. Louis to see Nick Bognar. Let us,
Oh man,
what comes to mind when you think of Nick?
flavor it to the face. It's a phrase I keep saying. Our editor in chief, Hunter Lewis, like is always laughing whenever I say this phrase. I've gotten him like it's. I think I've said it so many times. It's now like worked into his vocabulary. We were on a call with our PR person for Meredith, and he just said the phrase so casually, and I just had to do everything in my power to stop laughing. I was like, I've worked my way into your brain, which is very funny. But yeah, Nick's food is just like the epitome of like just unfiltered not unfiltered, but like just he doesn't hold back when it comes to flavor. Like less is more is not an adage in his kitchen. Am I right? Like he his story is also really cool. He also grew up in a restaurant family. His mom owns a Japanese restaurant that he now also like basically runs. His aunts own restaurants. So he really came up through that. But his family he's actually half Thai, half white. So he cooks like incredible Thai food, often like an homage to his grandma. And then at the same time, because his mom owned a sushi restaurant growing up, he got really into sushi, and then he like worked at Uchiko and like in Texas and some other places. So he is sort of this kind of funny dual master of both Thai cooking, like and Japanese sushi. Like his nigiri is some of the best nigiri I've ever had. So you can easily like it sounds like a crazy Pan Asian restaurant, when you like think about it, but it actually makes perfect sense once you get to know Nick.
And
Yeah.
what's the name?
A lot of
What's the name of the restaurant?
Indo in St. Louis.
Yeah, and he's kind of stealth, I feel like like, sort of like the way he presents and stuff like that, it seems like, "Oh, he's probably not gonna take stuff super seriously," and then bam!
Yeah, 100%. He's very laid back as a person, but as a chef, he's like meticulous. Yeah.
Oh my god, I can't. So I go through St. Louis usually every year because I go to speak at this barbecue conference in Southern Illinois, and I stop off in St. Louis. And this next year, I need to book an extra day to go there because
Yeah, wait, take me. I want to go to the barbecue
oh my
conference. That
god,
sounds
it's
amazing.
so fun. It is so fun every year, and it's Amy Mills at 17th Street Barbecue has this every year, and it's such a great thing. I think I've done it like 7, 8 years in a row, and it's just the best thing. But then you get
Wow.
to go through St. Louis, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Let us move on to the Northeast to Mr. Douglas Williams. What comes to mind with him?
Oh man, Douglas and pasta and passion. Like I have never met a chef so passionate. Like just oh, and he has an incredible jawline. Like we're just
Okay, just sorry to objectify for a second, but he is a beautiful man.
it's a very good looking class of VNCs. A lot of very good jawlines. Like I'm not gonna lie. I didn't actually know what every chef looked like beforehand. So before anyone accuses me of only picking beautiful people, but no, they're really deeply talented cooks. Douglas's story is really fascinating. Again, he grew up with a father who was a chef and a mother who was a cocktail waitress, but his mom was like much older than his dad. It was a very fascinating relationship. He's half black, half Syrian, Lebanese American, which is, and then, but he's like a pasta master. Like he fell in love making pasta at Copa in Boston. And, he it's also a master of texture, which I think comes from the fact that he grew up with Crohn's disease and had like very severe
Yeah.
Crohn's disease. as a high schooler, and then he still wanted to go to culinary school though, which was wild. And so then he went to culinary school, and then he couldn't actually eat any of the things that because he was like still in like recovery for his Crohn's disease. So he couldn't eat gluten, he couldn't eat a lot of stuff. So he was telling me he would like chew everything to like as like as small as he could chew it to like understand the texture and the flavor, and then he would spit it out into this like small
Oh,
trash can by him because his body couldn't handle digesting it, but like he just wanted to learn everything about it. So I think it's really shaped his approach to texture and flavor. It's like really at like a molecular level in a way that I've not really seen, too many places, too many chefs like do. It's fascinating. Yeah. But really,
yeah.
just really great like pastas. And he also makes this like polenta, which I just kind of refer to as like sexy polenta. Uh, just like it's like a brick of polenta. Like I don't know. You just never think of polenta. Like polenta is such a like hearty like rustic food, and so he does it. He does it's like a rectangle that's like pan fried on every side, so it's like super crispy. The middle is creamy, and then it just comes like dripping with like honey and this like sort of like a sweeter cheese. It's like phenomenal. It's sexy polenta. Yeah.
I think that's going to be all of our Halloween costumes. If we're allowed out of our house by then, we're all just going to be sexy polenta for Halloween. um, Let us move here to where I am right now, to New York City and Unjo Park. Oh, Unjo, Joe.
Joe. Yeah, she goes
What comes to mind?
quiet reverence.
Oh,
That's what Joe is someone who is comes off as like very soft spoken, but cooks kind of extremely gonzo Korean American food. Like it's like just mega, and like when you are at Kawi, which is this insane restaurant in Hudson Yards, it's just this insane like Lux Mall on Manhattan's like West Side.
it's
Um,
freaky. It
it's
feels
really
like it was teleported in from some other planet. It's really a strange entity.
It's a strange entity, but Cowie's sort of like a really magical. Cowie's like the reason to go to Hudson Yards. I'm not sure there's many other reasons, but Cowie is like the reason to go, and the only reason I've ever really schlepped out there. And Joe's cooking is magical, but when you sit in Cowie, like, which is a very like it is a luxe restaurant. It's very plush, and she's serving things like $79 kimbaps, which are like kimbap is like a food that's usually like $5 at like an H Mart, and it's basically Korean sushi. But she, does things like candied anchovies and caviar and foie, and like just makes it into like such a luxe thing. But when you listen to like how her servers and how her staff like refers to her, it's like with such reverence in a way that like it's like such deep respect. It's a respect you can only get by being like a kind uh and generous person. It's not the kind of respect you can get by like yelling at your staff and like being like a jerk. And so just the way they talk about her, her food was already like incredible, and I knew just by like those like that talent alone, like Kawi for me was on the fence in that sense. Like, could it be a best new restaurant or is it like a best new chef? And just hearing her staff talk about her, like that is what truly sealed the deal for me. Like, she has such, and you can see their kitchen is like partially open. It's like such a diverse staff. It's such a big staff. And she runs it so smoothly and with such kindness, but also such, high standards. And to be able to balance both of those is big. Yeah.
No, it's a really beautiful thing because, like, I remember, like, Angie Marr, one of our best new chefs in, I always forget if it was 2017, 2018. I think it might have been 2017. Before I met her, I heard the staff talk about her, and I thought, I really want to know this person who they respect so tremendously. And I mean, that's how you end up building a legacy. And, I think we should mention that, like, Joe's restaurant is part of Momofuku. So she, came up through, another best new chef who, in recent years has chilled out from the yelling some. But yeah, it's such an amazing thing to see, like, with these past classes, what begets what. And and it's such an interesting thing to see how restaurants have changed from when Dave was named a BNC to where Joe is. And I'm thinking, like, 10, 15 years down the road, like, to somebody who's working for her now, like, are they going to be a BNC? It's such a, it's such a fascinating thing to see, like this evolution and this lineage that happens. And it was really cute when I emailed him to check in about something, and I knew that he knew that she was one, and he was so proud of her.
Oh,
And really, yeah, it was really incredibly lovely, because he knows, I'd listened to a podcast that they'd done together, and his awe of her is so present, and it was just a really, really beautiful thing to hear. It was just really nice. Oh, and can we talk about shears for a second? About
yes.
oh, love it. Let's, can you explain what these shears are?
Yeah, so at Kawi, one of the most magical things on the menu is Joe's treatment of rice cakes, which they make in house, which is like basically unheard of. She has one machine that she like got from South Korea, and she's like, if it breaks, like we're screwed. But they do something like 600 pounds of like rice flour that they turn into rice cakes like every week, which is crazy. So, but she makes this like incredible dish, which is like a coil of rice cakes that's then pan fried and like tossed in this like jammy, beautiful chili sauce, topped with like a layer of ham, like a super thin layer, and then some like crunchy like rice bits. And it arrives to the table with some beautiful gold shears, so you can kind of cut it, into pieces, bits and pieces, to eat, and it's such a fun experience. I actually just texted Joe this morning. I had a dream last night that my entire bedroom turned into one of those coils.
Oh, that's not a bad dream at all.
Yeah,
Like, did
not
you have to
bad.
eat
I
your
was
way
like,
out of here?
it's a good bed and like a bed you want to eat. So I was like, this is fine. I miss.
I would feel really good about that. It's amazing what chefs do make cameos in my dreams. It's really a funny thing, because, like, we both talk to so many of them, and it's really funny to see who shows up and what they represent in the dreams. I kind of love that.
For sure. I think this is just my subconscious telling me I need some rice cakes. So I need to like go do that ASAP.
Dude, we all need some rice cakes. Like, I have some frozen rice cakes in the freezer right now, and I think it's going to be such a sad imitation right now. But like, if I go and make some, like, shortly, it'll like scratch like a tenth of that itch.
For sure.
But let us hop on the Estella and go down to Philadelphia to visit Camille Cogswell.
Oh,
What?
Camille. She's a jack of all trades. Like there is nothing she can't do. So Camille's actually very interesting that she's not just like she started off as a pastry chef and she still holds double duty as Zahav's pastry chef, but she also runs both the pastry and savory kitchen at Kafar, which is an all day cafe type spot with like dinner, at night. And she makes just incredible like Kubani toasts, which are it's this beautiful layered Yemenite bread that takes like 12 hours to bake in the oven. And she tops it with things like, brown butter, ricotta, and like fresh berries, like tahini, like super creamy tahini. She also does it with like salt roasted beets that are just like this unbelievable magenta color, the kind that's like your favorite Crayola marker. Like that's like
Mm.
that color, but she gets it from the beets. She makes just beautiful dishes in the evening, like this tabit, which is this Iraqi chicken casserole for two. It's some of the best chicken and rice I have ever had in my entire life. And like that's really saying something because rice is I think my ultimate food group, of all time. Like inevitably my cabinet has at least at any given point 12 types of rice, which is a lot for someone who's not home enough to cook. So for me to be like that blown away by a rice dish also, like it's something I truly think about all the time. Yeah, total just force of nature. Also someone like Joe, who comes up from under a really powerful mentor, Mike Salmanov, and but they both hold each one of their spots, Kawi and Kafar, like, very much feel like their spots. Like, Kawi feels like Joe's spot and Kafar feels like Camille's spot. And they've really left their marks, on these places.
That is all of our chefs. And so, is there something, like a driving principle that you had in mind when you were, this is not, I will note for the record, this is not the first time you have done this. You assembled lists and put in the legwork for Thrillist before, and you worked other places. Did you have some sort of mantra, guiding principle, framework in mind as you were going around and scouting? Like, do you have any notion of like how many different places you had to go, and what did you have in mind?
I think it's really important. I say this a lot, to a lot of my coworkers, and sorry for them to hear repeats all the time. But the food being delicious is not enough. Obviously that's like the baseline, right? Your food has to be like stupid good. The kind that you have to text everybody about immediately. Like that is the baseline. But like to become a B&C, you're not just cooking incredible food. Like you also have to be an incredible person who respects your staff, respects your community, ideally respects the environment. You're thinking about equity across every facet of the restaurant industry, and like doing your best to create like a positive work environment, and like doing your best to create something that's not just ego driven, doing your best to think about things beyond just the food that you are serving, on the table to the customer. It has to go beyond that. And in a way that it is tough, like I'm not sure that was a burden placed on previous classes. But I think to be a best new chef today, you have to embody all of that. Just being an incredible talent in the kitchen is not enough. How are you treating the people that are in the kitchen with you? That speaks just as much, as the food that you're putting out on the table. So that was like a huge thing for me. I also wanted to, again, pastry chefs, it was really important for me to like break down that wall, that to show that like pastry can have just as much leadership and just as much, forward thinking abilities as, savory chefs. And then, I mean, obviously Jordana did like a wonderful job of diversifying these lists, the last couple of years. But diversity, was also just like very important to me, and not just diversity for diversity's sake. Like this is really just, I just think it's more exciting, to have this kind of cooking, and to have cooking that is like accessible for, readers to get to. It's not something that you have to like, try and find a seat at, a year in advance, and like, pay like hundreds of dollars, for a hotel room, and then like thousands of dollars for flights, like, just to be able to like have one dinner. If it's inaccessible to people overall, like I also found that to be like a really difficult thing to overcome if you're, running that kind of place. So, all of these spots, like, sure, you might need a reservation, but do you need a reservation a year in advance? Like, no. But they're all spots that I think you can get, it is worth getting on a plane for, though. Like, that is also a baseline for me. Like, would I want to get on a plane to eat at one of their restaurants? Like, the answer is yes. And I literally did. So,
Oh my God, when we are back on planes, like I'm just imagining everybody like on the plane, like gripping this issue and and using it as their map to go around the US. Because I think we are all emotionally starved for that kind of experience of a restaurant, and and the people in it, and the communications that you have with the people who work there, and having somebody pay that kind of care to you. I think those of us who love restaurants so dearly, like, are, I think, more than ever, are valuing the people who work in them. And and I'm hoping anything that comes out of this is that people, regular diners, are going to understand the humanity of the places that they're going more than ever before. Even the people they can't see, maybe they'll listen and realize, like, okay, yeah, it's not just like the person on the poster or the person whose name is on the menu or whatever, but there's a whole crew behind every single one of these restaurants and people. And I just want it to be even more appreciated. And I don't know where I'm going with this, but God, I miss
I love
restaurants.
restaurants too. Yeah, deeply. And I hope, that if everything sort of had to burn, the way it did, that we're able to rebuild a restaurant industry that is equitable, that is fair, that um, does take all of these things into account. Otherwise, I'm not sure it's worth bringing back
No,
restaurants the way that they were overall.
I agree. I People talk about the new normal. I'm like, that wasn't working out so well for a lot of
Right.
people.
But all of these chefs, like, when you really talk to them, I had the privilege of talking to them about what their hopes for the future are, and all of them, it's very clear that this type of work is like a big priority, diversity, healthcare, citizenship plans, for their undocumented staff. Um, embracing like technology, continue work, their immediate local community, but like, charities and well-funded people to like, help feed people that, struggle with food access. Like these are things that they talk about as their visions for the future. And, I'm excited, to see the futures that they built.
Cool. I mean, I am so too, because again, when I've had the privilege of being able to look at their faces all together on a screen, and that just, I really, really hope that this is the future, and that, folks of all different just experiences are given the capital, or, somehow given access to the
Mhm.
capital to realize this, because, we're all stronger. If the more of us, the more voices that are included in the song, the more, the richer and more beautiful it is. And, I can't wait to see what comes out of all of this. And I want to ask one last question here, which is, what you were doing was intense. Like, I saw you, I think I texted you a lot and slacked you with you a lot while you were
Mhm.
on the road. But it's hard. I travel. I always thought of myself as traveling a fair amount. It's nothing compared to what you do, what you've had to
You
do,
travel quite a bit,
but nothing
Kat.
like what you had to do. How did you take care of yourself while you were on the road?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm being really honest with myself. I learned a lot of lessons this year that, if I'm able to do this next year, ideally in the same capacity, who knows, given the current state of things, what the restaurant industry will look like, by the time scouting comes around again, and if it's safe for me to do it. But I learned a lot of lessons of like what not to do and, what to really prioritize. So, I'll be taking those with me. But things that did I found to be really helpful, was, I would make sure to keep in touch with my family. I found that, or like FaceTiming with family and friends. Like, I was lucky to, in most cities that I was going to, be able to like meet up with, a friend or a cousin or someone that I knew. So in a way, it was really nice to be able to get to see, people that are spread out around the country that I don't always get to see in person. But at the same time, like just having, like, I have a couple friends that really ground me, and like my family really grounds me. And so making sure to like find time to speak with them every single day, was really, really important. I also always took time, to watch like really terrible shows, like the kind that your
You,
brain would
I,
do any
I,
work.
I am delighted by your taste in television.
I have terrible taste in television. In that, like, I will just watch all kinds of like Real Housewives, Vanderpump Rules. Like, if it's Bravo, like I just want it. Like, and so yeah, the more terrible it is, like the better. And so I watch a lot of that. I found that when I worked out, like my mental sanity was a lot better. I didn't do as good of a job of it, but it did really help when I did do it. And then also just like, things that were really important were like a really good pair of noise canceling headphones, on the plane. Like it made a world of a difference. And also just making sure I wasn't, checking in on Slack and all that kind of stuff constantly, asking for extra time on deadlines because like, I just got off of a 5-hour flight and I have to run to this restaurant and I have to do this and this, like that I can't file this thing tonight. I might need a couple extra days, like, and not being afraid to like ask for that space, I think really made a huge difference too.
Oh my gosh. And I hope that so while we're recording this, it's tomorrow morning. Everything is going to drop, and I've been checking in with a few of the BNCs and just saying like, tomorrow's going to be really intense. Give yourself the emotional space to be able uh, to really enjoy this and the fruits of your labor. And so, Kush, I'm going to say this to you too, because I've seen friends through this, both on the editorial side and on the BNC side. Like, I hope that you're in a place where you're going to be able to really fully look at all this work that you've put into it and see, that this list detonate out into the world and all the ripple it's had. And, I know we're living through difficult times, but I feel like the ripple of joy that this is going to put out into the world and into communities that need it and toward people who need it is going to be a really seismic thing. And so I'm so excited for you.
Thank you. I mean, I really appreciate all of your support too. Like, it's been really nice to have such supportive coworkers and people like you that I can just text, when I'm stressing out.
Well, I hope tonight you are able to, have some chill and rest. And because, like, boom, this thing is going to go online, I think 9 a.m. So, but actually,
Yeah.
so of course, by the time everybody's listening to this will have already happened. But go to, foodandwine.com and see all of Khushbu's beautiful writing about it. Check out our Instagram, because we've had the chefs record videos for this, introducing themselves, and we've had to ask a lot of different things of them than we have been able to to do in the past years, because they've had to do it themselves or get somebody around them to take photos and videos and stuff. But I hope you'll like how it's presented online, and you're going to get to know these people a lot better. So would you tell the people, Khushbu Shah, how they can find you on social?
You can find me at KushinOJ on Twitter and Instagram. There's a story behind that, but one day when I can get the at Khushbu handle, I will. But till then, it's at KushinOJ. That's KHUSHANDOJ.
Yeah. And then this is all going to be in print in the July issue, which actually drops mid-June, but it's all going to be on foodandwine.com. So please follow along as all of this is dropping, and cheer on these wonderful, wonderful humans who Khushbu has assembled. And thank you to our producers, Jen Martinick and Hallie Tarpley. Thank you to our photo editor, Sarah Crowder. And, this is all part of Food and Wine Pro, which is a section on Food and Wine where we're really talking about the people in the industry and the mechanics of the industry, and how they're all, and right now about how they're all being affected by this pandemic, and just really trying to be of use to the industry, and and sharing lessons that we have learned along the way. They're going to be mentorship lessons that we have shared with the class of Best New Chefs. You can find that by going to foodandwine.com/FWPro. And you should also sign up for the newsletter, the Food and Wine Pro newsletter, which there's a very prominent link on the page, but it is written by our editor-in-chief, Hunter Lewis, and with some help from me and from our associate restaurant editor, Osepa Burr. And we compile all of the biggest news in the industry every week, so you don't have to go scrambling around for it. We've got it all for you there. And we've also got a weekly meditation from our in-house meditation instructor and test kitchen goddess, Kelsey Youngman, who we share the same mantras that she drops at our Monday morning meeting. So, the most important thing through all of this, Kush and I were talking there about like how to take good care of yourself, like while you're on the road. So I hope you listen to that. I hope you internalize some of that, and I hope you take good care of yourself.